Yeah, yeah, I think it's on a lot of Canadians' minds. Is like, yeah, what does the future hold? Especially with, the amount of debt that we've taken on in the last 4 months. Um, you know, businesses, like a lot of people going out of businesses having to pivot to adapt to the current situations. Obviously, trades are an essential service. So yeah, where do we go from here when it comes to those things? And like, yeah, like I have a lot of people, a lot of friends that are in the trades, and they're very successful. I'd say probably more successful than individuals that are working, as you said, white collar jobs. They do live a different lifestyle, and you can be envious. Like sometimes I'm envious of some of the things my friends are able to do with working in as a skilled professional. It kind of leads me to kind of then kind of next segues, like with the trades, but also, where do we go for technology progression, and how do we keep tech within Canada, and how do we, pump out, get more people involved with tech, but also obviously we has to be a fine line of, we also need the skilled workers, and how do we stay like globally competitive, going forth.
I'll tell you, to quote Austin Powers here on that one, that that train has sailed. Globally, competitively in terms of technology, we are not. We may laud ourselves by saying, oh, we've started up, this incubator here, or this little company over here that kind of came up. For every Shopify that we have over here, there's 100 of them in China, and probably 10 of them small companies like that in the US. I mean, yes, one, it's because of our population, but we can't have 350 million people kind of living here in the tundra, right? I mean, it's it's kind of a difficult place to live in physically. But we've tried to build that kind of that Scandinavian model, but insofar as technology is concerned, in my mind, at least from what the numbers say, we've already lost that battle to China. And again, it's due in no small part to education. Right, and this is the mindset shift again, like I said, right? It's really coming down to the methodology of education too. How do we train and retrain our workers over here? So when people talk about things like automation, et cetera, I'm not worried about the plumber or the electrician or the carpenter getting their job automated, because that's actually tremendously hard to automate. You look at the Boston Dynamics, they've got these robots jumping up and down and kind of running like a trying to imitate the biological, but there's clearly other better ways to be able to automate the physical. But in terms of automating the physical, I mean, even self-driving cars, right? There's so many things that are really complex to be able to do there. So I don't know whether tomorrow or even in the next 5 years, self-driving cars are just going to come in and put every cabbie or even Uber out of business. From a technology perspective, I don't see that happening as soon, because we've got a long way to go in terms of AI to be able to make that happen. But that's another different thing altogether with AI. Automation, honestly, I think it's going to threaten more of the white collar jobs than it is going to be threatening blue collar style jobs. Like the management consultant and the data scientist actually needs to be more afraid than the plumber in terms of their jobs and competitiveness. So if we focus entirely on trying to teach our kids to code, at the age of 5, which I think is a disastrous idea, you should be teaching them fundamentals on how to think. Then you're only going to you're going to be focusing on an area where you've already lost the battle. You should be focusing on trying to build up rudiments. And this is where I think countries like China really, leave the politics aside for a second, right? You look at the education system over there. It has its own extreme of being very ruthless and rote-based. A lot of the children there, they have to memorize the equivalent of 10,000 characters, and because of ideograms and characters when they're children. What average 7, 8-year-old has memorized 10,000 different things and has learned how to write them perfectly in North America? We don't focus on that type of thing. So yes, it's the same thing in India. I mean, it's very heavily rote based, and I spent some of my education in India. I came here when I was 9, but that kind of got beaten into me. I mean, you write the letter Q in a wrong way. I mean, you don't get the best marks. You kind of get smacked upside the head for it. Now, I'm not saying you bring that type of hard rote system over here to the exclusion of any type of creativity. But the focus on fundamentals is really something that needs to be more emphasized over here, as opposed to just trying to jump towards technology education. And it's also letting people know, what, it's okay to go into something that isn't just purely coding. Because in 5 years, there's already, I mean, people looked at, stuff coming out of OpenAI, GPT-3, or, it's starting to generate code now. And frankly speaking, if you're going to say, buy Canadian or buy American, if you're a business person, why would you pay someone here $70 an hour, $50 an hour, when someone in Vietnam is offering to do it for 15 or 10? So it's kind of a, we're focusing on a little bit of a dead problem. And this may, this has gotten me into, kind of lots of arguments before. And I've gotten a lot of flame mail for this type of stuff, saying, how could you say, don't teach kids to code? But I'm saying, park your feelings for a second, right? Like, listen to your feelings, Luke. You know it to be true. You can't compete on a global stage if your entire industry is focused on labor arbitrage. And this is where we've got to say, how do we end up becoming more resilient as a society, more ability to be more holistic, as opposed to just trying to focus only on code? That's not our long-term future. So I think I'm answering your question kind of a long-winded way, and it keeps on coming back to education and kind of these mindset shifts. But Canada, if we don't play this right, again, this is what could end up putting us down, right? We imagine we come out 3 years later and we go, oh, you know what? We came up with our first package for automatically generating neural nets. China's going to look at us and go, oh, that's great. That's so cute. We did that 15 years ago. In terms of the AI race, they're ahead. The tech race, they're ahead. Manufacturing race, they're ahead. They can end up filling 10 football stadiums with all the engineers that they've got for manufacturing, the full stack of skills. We can't even fill up probably, a small lecture hall here in Canada, right? So just in terms of the density, we've got to figure out how to make our economy more sustainable in a different way that allows us to work more harmoniously, where we've got kind of, mutually equitable interests. And that's the Canadian equation that we have to figure out, because we are, if we try and punch too much above our weight in terms of population, et cetera, this is not a battle we can win. We've got to figure out a different calculus to this equation, right? So for us to try and go on the global stage and say we truly are a global leader, we're not. That's not what the data says. It's the patriotic thing to say, but it's not what the reality is. So we have to figure out, how do we consume and how do we contribute in a different way? Yeah, so sorry to pour cold water on that one, but I mean, this is the, you asked me for my opinion and I'll give it to you.
Well, yeah, it's it's a hard pill to swallow. Yeah, like we are a small small populace in the second largest country in the world, where most of our country is inhabitable. Yeah, it's a great question, and great answer to something that's probably on a lot of people's mind.